let's go.
Let's do it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Do What You Can for the People, the show that nobody asked for. I'm here today with my good friend Margo. She is the copywriter and marketing strategist of That Seems Important, the co-host of Ham Ya, an aspiring pancake chef, and a mom extraordinaire. Thanks for being on the show today, Margo. So happy to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I brought Margo on the show today because we want to talk about how having a baby really fucks up sustainable living. And we're going to dive into a lot of different layers of that. But what this conversation is really about is parental privilege and how so many times you want to make the eco-conscious choice, but it means that you have to choose between giving up time, giving up money. Basically, sustainable living and having a baby do not go hand in hand. There's a lot of pressure and societal norms that people think that they need to live up to. And there's a lot of shame culture that happens. And we're just kind of sick of it.
That's a great note to start on. I mean, like, I would love to add some context here, to share with me, because I think in the mom world, everyone wants to be the like sustainability perfect mom, and there's a lot of shaming. And for me, as someone who's entering into this conversation, I came from it already being like an anal retentive green person. So like my sister and I both like used to troll our parents with recycling, like trying to get everything set up. My sister made a compost for my dad that he still uses. So like we are not new to the conversation, and and so I entered this being like, okay, I got glass bottles. I had made a choice about, like, I came in knowing like what the threats were. I wasn't like, I think some parents for the first time are learning about BPA and freaking out. There's a lot of fear-based targeting to parents, and that's problematic for different reasons. And I think what I found so surprising, and what we were going to talk about today, is the moral quandary I found myself in choosing constantly the lesser of two evils in many ways. How much more I really needed to understand about sustainability and systems, how much I felt like a cog in the wheel of things that really didn't matter that I thought mattered. Because if there were systems in place to support them, there was nothing you could do. And then things like whether to use a cloth diaper or a regular disposable diaper, like you have to pick your poison, because one uses too much water, one provides waste. And it's like, which one is the right choice?
And I think that's a common thing, not just for like sustainable parents, but sustainability in general, is that you're always picking your poison. Like if you talk about nut milks, do you want to go with a high intensity, like water intensity almond milk, or do you want to go with something that maybe requires more energy to produce? And so you're always making these judgment calls and trade-offs. And it's something that I don't think people talk about in sustainability in any capacity, is that there is no really one right way to do things. We're all kind of muddling our way through things and trying to figure it out. And I think when you're a parent, it's that much more difficult.
Yes. It's difficult because of the judgment. And then it's also difficult because, I mean, I remember feeling so much shame when it took me 2 years before I actually owned Ziploc bags. I was like, I will be reusable. Like, it's going to take more energy. It's fine. I'm like, this is what matters. You're going to live consistent with your values. And then at a certain point, it's like a slow erosion, like a wave on a rock, over time, where all of a sudden I thought I had these sharp edges and they're rounded out because you haven't slept in 2 years, or you won the battle on food, and so you're decided plastic is just not the hill you're going to die on. And like, it's like I wanted to come here today with some inspiring things to tell people, but really I feel so I want you to inspire me with what we could possibly do here, because you don't have infrastructure in place yet. Where an example I told Nikki behind the scenes was, we send our child to daycare, and you are not allowed to use glass, understandably, because kids throw things and they break and they step on glass, and it's a huge safety liability. So you don't want to mess around with that. But but that meant I had to go and buy a whole bunch of plastic things. And then that led to a whole new series of conversations about reusing and what's sustainable and what's practical. And then like what's actually clean in the house in this particular moment in time. And the amount of effort. I mean, this sounds ridiculous when I say it right now to you, but anyone with kids will understand the amount of effort it takes at the end of a full workday to have to clean the dishes many times. And then be like, God, I have to clean again. Like the promise of convenience that capitalism provides is really alluring. And so I understand how we got to here. Like I get it. I just was shocked that I got sucked in. I guess I'm human despite
no, and like you said, it's really sexy. I mean, if you've spent the whole day working and then you spend an hour arguing with your kid because all they want to eat is frozen waffles and that's not nutritious, by the time you get them to bed, you wrestle them through bath time, you put them in bed, they fall asleep, that whole process, having to then wash all of your reusable silicone bags, like it's not a top priority. It's just not. I think just kind of diverting off for a second, one of the true examples of what parenthood is like is you posted on your Instagram stories a while ago about how your daughter threw a tantrum in the hallway because she couldn't eat her tacos in the hallway. And I was just like, man, having a kid looks awesome.
She loves tacos. I forgot about that.
And I think that when you're having those day-to-day battles, and then you have to go and do things for convenience, for sanity, it's not just society, and we've talked about this, that makes you feel guilty. It's you feel guilty yourself. And so how do you kind of come to terms with doing what you have to do for survival? And I don't know if I have the answers that you're seeking, but I'm always here if you need to just vent and talk about it.
Well, I have one answer that can be helpful for people. And then we should talk about the money side of this conversation because I think it's really important. But since we've started this conversation, which Nikki and I have been talking about this for a while, I started to think about what are the things I don't compromise on? Like, what are the things that through thick and thin somehow have sustained? And I look at my behavior and like, I've never stopped cooking dinner. Like I've never done, like when it comes to food, it's like, I don't budge and it doesn't matter how many shortcuts are offered to me. And I think it's similar to the business questions where it's like, what are your values? What are your core values? And pick the hill you die on, and then just pretty much ignore everything else. Like I'm never going to get plastics all right. I will do 60% of it right. But I will never compromise on food. And I don't know if that's because I know too much about food that like I can't actually go back. I don't know if that, whatever it is, like food is the hill that I am choosing to die on. And I think but that allows me to spend all of my energy in that place. So my daughter's meals are 90% cooked, fresh ingredients, vegetables, meat, and what is it? Fruit. And then like we do have snacks, but I try really hard to temper it. And it's not like I'm perfect. I'm not a shamey parent. I totally understand if you need to do juices and stuff. It's not about that. It's about what I want from my family. And so like that I will put the time into, but then it does become a trade-off. I haven't found that I can do that and not use the Ziploc bags. And there's plenty of people who would argue like, then what's the freaking point? If you're going to put it in a Ziploc bag, you might as well feed them like poison. So like, that's a little extreme. Like, I think you have to know where to draw the line. And that's the other thing. Like so much of this is about like information literacy and how to understand things. And what concerns me about parents, so if you're watching this as a parent, is that like, if you are new to the sustainability conversation, take the time to learn, ask questions, and get educated, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on mommy blogs, especially if you're hearing from your friends. Like we are so mean to each other and we are so wrong often, or misguided on the things that really move the needle versus don't, and what's actually destructive versus isn't. And every little bit counts, that is true. But in a time when you haven't slept and you're dealing with a person who's having persistent temper tantrums, and maybe you're pregnant with their next third kid, like you want to go into it with good information literacy, and it's hard. You can go down the rabbit hole. so find a way to get, I think Nikki has good resources, but like finding a place where you can get the information you need, where you can separate the signal from the noise, and you're not just operating from a fear-based place all the time.
Yeah, and I think take everything with a grain of salt. I mean, one of the best, I'm not a mom, so everyone, spoiler alert, I don't have any babies, but I have a lot of friends who have children, and I think the best piece of advice that I have heard my mom give them is that kids don't come with instruction manuals, and nobody knows what's best for your family except for you. And so take the information in, absorb it for sure, but then pick and choose what feels right for you. And I'm so glad you brought up mommy bloggers. Do you know how many mommy bloggers there are? I was curious and I looked it up.
1,000 quadrillion.
In 2014, there was an estimated 4.4 million mommy bloggers. And that is a lot of information. And this isn't a knock on mommy bloggers, but I think that just the lifestyle that they tend to lead is unattainable for most people. And you need to remember that. And what works for their family is not necessarily going to work for your family. So don't try and live to that standard, really. It's kind of what I'm
Well, it's not even only about unattainable. It's not accurate. Like, even if you follow me online and I try to be really honest, you're not seeing all my life. Like, I'm a full human with lots of other facets to my life that aren't getting on social media. One, because I have boundaries, but two, because I probably forgot. And like, it wasn't something that was relevant that day. So like, you're not seeing a lot of the picture when it comes to influencers. And I don't want to knock all mommy bloggers, because I think there's some people trying,
for sure
to do good work, but like, take it as a friend who's talking to you about their personal experience, not as dogma. Like, I do think we still need to retain some authority and expertise, credibility here when it comes to these conversations. It makes me very nervous when I see people giving advice without accreditation.
Yeah, for sure.
Myself included, y'all.
I'm going to cut that from this. No,
you don't have to.
Let's talk about the money piece.
Yeah.
Obviously, living more sustainably is expensive, and it starts at the bottom and goes all the way to the top. Every part of it is more expensive, whether you're talking about making an upfront investment for reusables, or shopping zero waste products, or buying all organic, or buying ethically clothes. And I think for you especially, Margo, the piece that really triggered a lot of this conversation is the food, because that's, you know, the hill that you've chosen to die on. And I loved the way that you explained it to me when we had our kind of pre-call. So do you want to go for that again?
Sure. I'll see if I remember what I said. But like, let's start with, there was a friend of mine, we were talking about juice and what goes into juice, and how she would never give her kids juice, right? Like, said something like that, which is a very shamey thing to say. And I remember thinking in the moment, like, I also really wouldn't want my daughter to have juice, but I worked in consumer packaged goods. So when I say juice, it's different than when my friend says juice, because I worked in packaging. I know what the ingredients are. I know what high pressure pasteurization is and how that's different from heat pasteurization. I understand what concentrate is, like, and I know the effects of sugar on the body. I also know how these things are marketed. So like, that is an important piece of how I want to educate my children. But I also have many friends that don't have the privilege that I do of working from home, and who don't have the privilege of whatever financial resources we do or don't have. Some people are under loads of debt for many reasons that have nothing to do with their own decisions. Like, they have a sick parent, they have school loans, like they went to law school. I don't know your life, but like, nobody goes to the store going, I want to feed my kid garbage. Like, that is probably the part of this conversation that makes me the most angry. Like, no one is like, I would like a kid with diabetes. Like, that is not how we get to here. How we get to here is that socioeconomically, one is the money piece. It is expensive to actually buy the products that we tell people are good for them, which is a whole conversation we should have on marketing, and how much of the organic tax is legitimately an inflation of price, and how much of it is legitimately more expensive to produce. That's one conversation. But then the other piece of it is, we're not only talking about expensive and privilege in socioeconomic terms with money, we're talking about time. Like, time investment. I have the time, or people say you make the time, which I really get mad at people who say that to parents, where they're like, if it's a priority, you find time.
No.
And I'm like, you've never talked to 2 working parents who don't have support. Like, you just haven't. And I've had the privilege of support, so I see what I'm capable of, and I've also had no support. And so I see the difference in what that looks like, and both are exhausting. But some days you go to the store, you're done fighting, you give your kid the juice, and the consequences are just not as bad as people think. And I think that's the part of the conversation that's really hard as well, because in order to get people to care about sustainability, you do have to connect their behavior to subsequent results. So like, a lot of people I know feel like if they're feeding their child anything other than water and organic, like gluten-free anything, that they're contributing to climate change. And they sincerely believe that. And there's an argument to be made that that's kind of true. Then there's people on the other end who are just feeling like shit all the time, giving their kids sugar, and their kid's fine. Yeah. Their kid is fine. And so we have no really good intermediary to understand how these decisions actually affect us, which ones are the ones that are going to have a cascade of really negative consequences, which ones are shitty, but we'll get over it. It's impossible to have a North Star in this conversation in the parenting world when you're constantly bombarded with information and in a hyper fear-aroused state. So as soon as you have a kid, I mean, all you're thinking about is like, they could die at any moment. How can I make sure that they don't die? And so in that moment, you're impressionable, you're vulnerable, you're afraid, and you're listening to pretty much anyone. So which is why the mommy blogger thing is a little terrifying. But that's where it comes back to privilege and understanding which of these choices, like if you are in a privileged position, make them. If you're not ruining your child. And like, where are the lines between them? I don't freaking know.
I don't think anyone knows. I think it's the great mystery of our generation. But I think that one of the things that you touched on is how having the privilege of help and not having the privilege of help, that's a money thing, but both are exhausting. Like, if you have that privilege, it doesn't absolve you of the stress of being a parent, of the stress of day-to-day life, of the stress of making the right decisions. At the end of the day, you're still responsible for your child, even if you're not, even if your kid's going to daycare, the decisions that are being made for your child are still made by you. And I think there's a lot of decision fatigue that parents face.
Oh yeah, you decide what you're going to fight about. I mean, I have some friends who they see the menus at school and they're horrified, and there are consequences. Like, they come home, like, one of the reasons I'm a stickler for sugar is you should see my daughter, like when she's had sugar, how she behaves, and also she doesn't brush her teeth. So like, no matter how hard I try, I don't want her to have a cavity. So if I can avoid her eating certain foods until she starts brushing her teeth regularly, it's not like we don't try, but we sit there and she just licks it and sucks it. and then like, I'll be like, I'm gonna force it, and then I almost choke my daughter. And like, it's right. So that's a thing. And so you pick your battles in that respect. But it's really, really tough to know what is a good or bad decision. And there's another point on privilege I don't remember. I was just gonna make. All right, it's gone.
Oh, well, that's okay. Maybe it'll come back. I also think that whenever, like, I'm not a mom, and when I was younger, I always thought about what kind of mom I would be. Like, oh, I would be the kind of mom that only makes lunches from home and like spends all this quality time with my kids, and my kids are going to be angels. And it never works out that way. Everything that you think about parenthood, from what I've heard about my friends who are parents, it just goes right out the window, and everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And so when you're in that survival mode, just do the best that you can, man. Like, and cut yourself some slack.
I think that's true. I think that it comes back to knowing your values and what matters. Like, I know for me personally, sustainability is up there in the food department, but I haven't made the same choices with clothing. I haven't made the same choices with plastics. And part of it, like, I go in eyes open, and you do the best you can. But at a certain point, we live in a modern economy where it is really tough to win all the battles. And the point is not to win the woke Olympics. here. The point is to do the best you can given your constraints, because you could literally spend all of your time and money trying to be, Miss Sustainable, and we still don't have all the information. I have a friend actually who was recycling until she discovered that the recycling plant didn't send her stuff anywhere, and like there was no infrastructure in place, and it was just going straight to the landfill. And like I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen, but she did it because it made her feel good, and like she was a better person. But that was about her identity. It wasn't actually making an impact on the world. Yeah. So picking your battles, like for me, gendered parts of clothing is more important than reusable clothing. That's a hill I will die on. And so like just knowing what your boundaries are and what fights you're going to be up for, and the shame piece around money, the shame piece around what makes a good parent, what makes a good sustainable person. I think this goes beyond parenting, but it's really bad. Like I already am feeling like if someone hears this and they're like, oh God, Margo cooks all the meals. Like, let's put that with a grain of salt. It makes you sound like, I'm not baking shit from scratch, right? I'm like baking oatmeal in the morning for her. But we also have to be careful that that's not shaming. That's a choice I made, and I'm not looking at what you're doing. We got to keep our eyes on our own paper with a lot of this. So yeah, it's really hard to do the right thing. And I think the commitment to trying is what we can do, and a focus also on systemic level change and sort of shifting that. This is a fight my husband and I get in all the time, because I'm very much like, the individual can make a difference, and he's like, you need a system. Both are true, but it really helps if you have a system.
Yeah, no, I think something that we're always taught in our MBA program is like systems thinking. You can't like do anything without talking about systems thinking. And I feel like, it's the whole chicken and the egg situation. Which comes first? Do you need the system first, or do you need the buy-in first? Yeah. I think it has to happen at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's they work together.
Yeah.
They work together.
Well, this has been wonderful. I think that you've given us a lot to think about, and I appreciate you coming on here, because I think it takes a lot of bravery to step forward and talk about sustainable parenting.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Sure. I don't know if you had any other thoughts that you wanted to share.
Yes, let's take the judgment out of this conversation. We have a big global problem, several of them. And I think if we're going to fix this, we need to stop mommy shaming each other. We need to stop parent shaming each other. We have to stay in your own lane, do the best that you can, take the judgment out of, focus on the bigger picture of like what change we need to see in this world, and find our ways there.
I totally agree. I think if you replace the judgment with support for one another, it would just be a way better world.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Yes,
let's just give each other more love and hugs.
Yeah.
Like a safe distance.
Social distance hugs.
All right, Margo, I'll be sure to put all of your contact information down below, and maybe include some resources that we found helpful, so that people can get in touch with you and educate themselves. And apart from that, thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see everyone else next week.
Bye.